Max Alvarez of the Real News Network and Nick Livick of the UAW Union. Nick, this question is for you. You know, one of the things that we've seen, especially over the years, when it comes to the deterioration of the labor movement, particularly, we all know what the inflection moment was. Of course, was President Reagan firing the air traffic controllers in the summer of 1981. I'm curious if you've seen any type of seismic shift over the past several years, even from what you may have heard from your grandfather during the days of JFK, your father during the days of Reagan, and to where we are today. I see a lot of complacency with a lot of people, this idea of, well, we have it bad, but it could be a hell of a lot worse. Instead of, man, we really outnumber the hell out of these guys. Maybe the power really is with us and not with them. I would say you have to make a choice. Either you're with workers or shareholders. You can't be with both. You have to make a decision. So how do you see it as far as the complacency and the fear of actually standing up for what you believe in to, at this point, where I think because of what we've seen between both the Trump and the Biden administrations, you can even say the same of the Obama and Bush administrations, Clinton, obviously, with the horrific policies that he passed under his administration, that we've come to a point with workers just basically saying, if it gets worse, it gets worse. But you know what? I'm going to make a stand.
I'm not sure how much worse it can get. I mean, medieval peasants had more days off than we do now. So, I mean,
to be able to actually work.
Yeah. I think is he frozen?
I think a lot of fear is being lifted, and I've seen a lot of change even since the Chicago Teachers Union uprising. I mean, even going back further than that, the Wisconsin uprising. I mean, we've seen it's been like this steady step up every single year of more labor actions, of more of just regular working people realizing what's going on. I think COVID played a really big role in a lot of the more militant actions you're seeing now. We were called essential workers, and we went out there. We did the jobs every single day, while the CEOs didn't. The shareholders didn't. They sat at home. They could work from home in some cases. And a lot of us were left to go out and keep society running. And when you're faced with that, and then you look at your paycheck and you're like, man, I risked my life for these people. And you look at your paycheck and it's not reflective of that. And you're looking at all the money that the CEOs made and all the stock buybacks that they engaged in, and how some companies have reinstated the dividend and they're paying out shareholders for doing nothing, for holding an electronic piece of paper. I think a lot of this is all kind of adding up and snowballing down. I think a lot of workers are losing the worry because we just went through a pandemic where they weren't even sure if the jobs were going to be there when they got back. And it put a lot of things into perspective for people, I think. So I think going forward, we're going to see a completely different labor movement, building on the militancy of past actions.
Good. So, and something that I've been curious about, because quite honestly, I thought the auto industry was basically dead in this country. Like, my understanding was that we really didn't do anything here anymore other than make weapons, and that mostly everything is from overseas. And I feel like between right to work states and outsourcing, they've so sufficiently screwed with labor in general, but just, I really didn't realize there was so much auto work. So I am curious, what are the key issues that you're dealing with? Because obviously, I mean, it's probably pay, but I'm sure there's a lot of other things in there that are just not right.
So right now you have one of our I don't know if I can say like which one's the top demand, but like we have temps on our shop floors, and these temps contractually can stay temps up to 2 years. But if they're laid off for, I think it's 30 days, their time restarts. So what happened during COVID when we were all laid off because of the government mandated shutdown? Well, all their time reset. So now you got temps that have been on there for going on 4 years, right? And then after they get hired in, then they got an 8-year progression to top pay. So you're talking about people that have worked a quarter of their life, 15 years, half of their working careers, and they're still not at top pay. How can you save for retirement? So one of the issues is we want to get temps hired in a timely fashion. For me, that's 90 days. I haven't heard anything official from International. I know they're pushing to hire all of the temps at ratification of our next agreement. Another thing we're fighting against is a two-tiered structure. So I'm tier 2. My mother is a traditional auto worker, so she has the benefits like a pension, retiree health care. She has more vacation hours than I do. She has more sub benefits. So like when we're laid off, her sub benefits go longer than mine do. So we want to eliminate the tiered structure completely. We want everybody, it's equal work for equal pay. It's the principal unions were founded on. We can't have somebody who's a temp making $16.67 an hour working right next to somebody or even on the same job, just on a different shift, getting paid half the amount. It's mind blowing. You wouldn't see this as a CEO, right? Like the next step down from Mary Barra isn't working for like $16 an hour. It's just not going to happen. Another thing we want reinstated is COLA. So during the Great Recession, we gave up a lot of concessions to keep our companies afloat. They came to us. We opened up our contract and we gave concessions. The company said these concessions are going to be temporary. They're not going to be permanent. You're going to get them back once we're back on our feet. And we haven't seen that. So cost of living adjustments, COLA was one of the things that we lost during the Great Recession and something that we're looking to get back. It's still in our contract. It's just suspended language. We want the right to strike over plant closures. They have closed 65 plants in the last 20 years. And I think about it in a different way. That's 65 communities. That's 65 Janesvilles. That's 65 Belvederes. That's 65 Lordstowns. These are all communities where these jobs were the jobs to have in those areas. So once they left, those areas were decimated. Janesville's still rebuilding. I don't know the full story on Lordstown, but I imagine it's quite similar to the one that I lived through Janesville. So we want the right to strike over plant closures so we can protect our work and we can protect the American economy and we can keep these jobs here where they belong. We want to get raises for retirees. They haven't had an increase in their pension in decades. Some retirees are making, I think it's like $900 a month. And that's just, it's a crime. We don't want our retired brothers and sisters to go destitute when they gave the best years of their lives to these corporations. This work is brutal. It breaks down our bodies. A lot of these auto workers are going to have multiple surgeries on their hands, elbows, shoulders, backs, necks, knees. And so these benefits, they're deserved. We're literally killing ourselves on the line to generate profit for them. The least they can do is take care of us in our later years. I feel like I'm forgetting some stuff.
No, that's good. Yeah. No,
so,
go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, I think Nick is a phenomenal speaker, and really laying this out in just the clear terms that everyone needs to hear. But yeah, just there was a great piece in Labor Notes by Dan DiMaggio and Keith Brower Brown that kind of laid out some of the core demands as well. The ones that Nick listed, the restoring the defined benefit pension and retiree health care, increasing pensions for current retirees, the right to strike over plant closures, a working family protection program. So if companies shut down a plant, they would have to pay laid off workers to do community service work, increasing paid time off, and Sean Fain has said it's the most, audacious kind of slate of demands that the union has put forward to the big three ever, really. And I think that, that's good, right? He's saying you're not dealing with your mama's UAW here. We are done with that concessionary bargaining shit. We are coming to get back what we are owed. And I really want to underline that part of it, as Nick said, because workers are owed this, right? This is not people asking for something that they did not earn, that they did not deserve.
It's not charity.
No, and I want to just put that into stark relief for people watching, because remember who we're talking about here. We are talking about the big three automakers. We are talking about companies like GM and Chrysler that were bailed out by you and me and every other taxpayer 15 years ago to the tune of $80 billion fucking dollars. And when that happened, when the American taxpayers saved the big three automakers after they had mismanaged their own companies and put themselves in a precarious position going into the financial crash, and workers are the ones who bore the brunt of that, as we well know. As Nick said, the union, just like workers did in 1979 when the government bailed out Chrysler, right? There were strings attached to that bailout. It was union workers need to take less. They need to tighten the belt. They need to make sacrifices because everyone's got to make sacrifices so that we can stay afloat. Workers did that. They did their part. They did sacrifice 15 years ago, and they were explicitly promised that when these companies were back in the black, when the storm was over, when they were back to being profitable, they would be repaid for the sacrifices they had made. And how were they repaid? Right? Let us not forget. This is personal for me because in the first season of Working People, when I was still getting like my feet wet, I was editing the podcast myself. I was making contacts as best I could when no one knew who the hell I was. I did many interviews with GM workers during those layoffs that were announced the day that workers got back from Thanksgiving vacation in 2018, right? They came back from, being with their families. Monday morning, they heard that GM was going to be eliminating 14,000 jobs, including plant jobs and white collar jobs. And this was after GM was billions of dollars profitable, right? So they made it back to the black. And in fact, on top of that, they got a big ass tax cut from Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress. And how did they repay, their workers, after they got that windfall, profit and tax? They cut more workers. They closed plants like Lordstown. I have to drive past that shuttered plant. There is an interesting story there. It kind of reopened, then it folded again. Then there was like a battery plant that opened, but they were paying workers $16 an hour. There's a whole other story there about Lordstown, but it's very, I think, illustrative of the situation that we're in, where companies like GM that got bailed out by the taxpayer then got, even more money from, corporate tax cuts by the likes of people like Donald Trump, who also went to Lordstown in 2017 and explicitly told the same workers that I interviewed, don't sell your homes. Don't sell your homes because we are bringing all those manufacturing jobs back. Literally within a year, Lordstown closed, and Trump had nothing to say to them. He tried to blame the union. He tried to blame anyone but himself. But you see the kind of, I don't want to make this a Democrat or Republican thing. They all fucking suck, right? But they are all kind of working for themselves, which is why we need to be supporting the workers who are actually doing what needs to be done to fight this crap, right? Even Biden has come out and said, please don't strike, please come to a deal.
I don't want to have to break their strike, so please don't do it. That's basically
I
what he's
can't
saying.
with him.
Yeah. And so the whole point there is that they're giving tax breaks to everyone, all their rich friends. They say they're pro-union, but they're not pro-union when it comes down to it. That is as clear as day. But there is a path forward here. There are ways to make gains. There are ways we can still win without getting mired in the bipartisan bullcrap. We just have to keep our eyes on the prize here and support folks like Nick, his union brothers and sisters in this contract fight. Because if the big three automakers are going to take that strike threat credibly, because they could be on strike as early as September 15th. It's coming up. Right. And what the UPS executives knew when they saw all those practice picket lines around the country, when they saw those rallies, they were like, oh, shit, these guys are fired up. They're actually ready to strike. And so if UAW members and the community and the rest of the country are rallying around auto workers and saying yeah, you're next, buddy, right? If you don't want to get, hit where it hurts, then you better come back to the bargaining table with some serious proposals. Now's the time to do that. We got 3 weeks before this contract is up.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.